Yo people, welcome back. Now, Wonka was a very surprising film. I was one of those who looked at the trailer and thought, we're in big trouble. Is this movie really needed? Is it necessary? Add the fact that it's a musical which is tricky to execute, especially in today's era where agendas are focused on more than the storytelling. I was thinking they could ruin it by overdoing the music stuff. It could come out looking cringe. The trailer looked like a woke fest. Would they make Wonka look like a complete idiot while the other inclusive characters carry him and push the plot more? A lot of the trailer didn't make sense either, but I decided to give it a chance. The tickets were also free, so that's a bonus. It's important to remember that this film isn't a prequel for any of the other two movies, but it's actually a prequel story for Willy Wonka and the novel that originally came out in 1964. It's a film that I would recommend for this time of the year as well, especially for families. So the spoilers will begin. If you haven't watched already and want no spoilers, this is your final warning. I think there's only one place to begin, and that's with Timothée's performance as Willy Wonka. This character was never going to be as crazy and funny as Johnny Depp's version. It's a young version, but at some points he showed some of the mannerisms of the crazy Wonka. Not a lot, but some moments at least. And remember, these are not connected, but it was nice to see some moments. He was more like the Gene Wilder version, and there were some nice callbacks to his one, such as the cane staying stuck on the floor, playing the mini flute, and the whole strike that, reverse it line. This version, in my opinion, made the story seem more magical, which is what Willy Wonka is all about. He brings the magic to the world. I think Timothée managed to capture Willy Wonka's charm pretty accurately. The story was pretty straightforward, to be honest. It still had the plot twist for the kids and things like that, which films that come out, especially from things like Disney, the MCU and big productions, they don't really do these things anymore. I know we're looking at the bare minimum, but at least this film has done it. So overall, I think the acting and the way the character was written made the whole film more entertaining. Something that added magic to this version of Wonka was also the cool gadgets he had in his briefcase and with his cane. It reminded me a lot of something you'd see in Harry Potter. All the different recipes we heard for his chocolate and the way he created it, again from the briefcase. The way he'd make them too, it felt like a potions class, but in a quick and fun way. I really like this backstory with the mum. I probably prefer it more than the Johnny Depp version with the dad. And I prefer this one on a more emotional and on a storytelling basis. We got to see that Willy Wonka originally wanted to be a magician, so that's why he has that magical presence about him, and he's basically merged that with the chocolate making. As a graphic designer as well, I actually liked that the font that he went on to use for the brand came from his mum's original design, and the golden ticket was also an inspiration from her. Let's move on to the character Noodle, who was heading into the wokeness territory in my opinion based off the trailer, and I hated the name Noodle originally. However, they didn't force her in any way, it wasn't woke, she didn't just overpower everyone and save the day, and everything about her made sense. The actress was good. She was the niece of Slugworth in the story. Since Slugworth was race swapped, she obviously had to look similar to him in some way, shape or form since they're family. Slugworth being race swapped is probably the only thing I'll say that people will try and call woke, but it is what it is. I'm being balanced. I usually call out the wokeness. Also, in the end, Noodle wasn't even her real name either, so I'm glad that got changed. Let's move on to the villains, which were kind of a mixed point for me because I wish they were written differently. I wanted to see more serious villains, people who would try to eliminate any sign of magic or positivity that Willy Wonka would bring. But if anything, they were written more to fit the musical element. I wanted to see people who were actually fearful of Slugworth and the other two, but they were just all idiots, especially the other two. They just were not serious villains. They did actually do serious actions to do with corruption and trying to kill Willy Wonka, as well as turning Noodle into an orphan, but I just couldn't take the villains seriously. But like I said, this is probably just a musical aspect. It just has to be this way because you can't have the whole juxtaposition between the villains and Wonka, even though it would be an interesting aspect, but it would be very tricky to pull off. I'm personally not a fan of musicals, to be honest, but this film was written similar to the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory version from the 70s, where other characters would also have their moment to sing compared to the 2005 version where only the Oompa Loompas would sing. A quick side note as well, they changed the design of the Oompa Loompas back to the 70s version of them. The opening lyrics of the Oompa Loompa song started the exact same in this film as the 70s version. I think this movie knew when to locate the musical parts, just not make it overwhelming, cringe, or an inconvenience that would end up wasting time for the movie. But yeah, overall, considering this is a musical, which I don't watch too many. I'd have to say this is about a 7 out of 10. A lot of callbacks, especially to the 70s version, which I appreciate when they do these things properly, especially in shows like Cobra Kai, which tie in nicely to the Karate Kid. Usually the old stuff just gets wrecked, as we saw in the Star Wars sequels, so it's nice to see people respect the original work. Like I said, the villains, I wish they could have been a bit more serious, a bit different, but it could cause a clash with the whole theme of it being a musical. I think the storyline was pretty straightforward, so it doesn't gain any points really for that. Timothée with a good performance as well. I would have liked to see more about the Oompa Loompas, but it was still good to see them involved in some way, shape or form. I'm not sure if they'll make a sequel, to be honest, but I'd personally like to see a sequel. It's been set up in a way where it could happen, and it would make sense too, because in this sequel we could start to see Slugworth's revenge, and then we can end that film on a loss for Willy Wonka, giving them an excuse to make the third film, which should be a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory reboot, remake, whatever you want to call it. My favourite Wonka is still the Johnny Depp version from 2005, a social outcast who's a genius and struggles with socializing, especially after he's been betrayed. But yeah, different territory for me. As always, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Drop a like on the video, sub to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for your time and have a great rest of your day.